3801 is arguably Australia's most famous locomotive, with it being the face of Australian railways for the past 75 years. Famously, when the Flying Scotsman visited Down Under in the late 1980s, 3801 accompanied the British engine for parts of the journey, reflecting a symbolic unity between the two countries and their two most famous engines. So let's go back 45 years prior to this event and look at the history of 3801. 3801 was the first of 30 38 class engines to be built, with construction complete in 1943. The first 5 engines of the 38 class were fitted with streamlining and were built by Clyde Engineering, with the rest of the class being completed without the streamlining. The idea for the 38 class was conceived in the late 30s, but due to the war, they saw significant delays. However, in early 1943, 3801 pulled the Newcastle Flyer for the first time and featured an all-grey wartime livery. This class of engine was designed for passenger services across NSW and frequently ran trains between Sydney and Newcastle and Sydney and Goulburn. In 1947, we see it get its infamous green and yellow livery, with this only lasting a few years into 1955, when it was given a black and red lined livery. By the mid-1950s, however, diesel engines started to replace steam engines on Australian railways, signalling the decline of these engines that were made less than 15 years prior. Luckily for the class, it took into the 1970s for the class to be completely replaced, as diesels struggled to meet the speed and performances of the Class 38s. In 1965, we see the engine get withdrawn for boiler problems, an issue that would stay with the locomotive even into 2020. The late 60s and early 70s saw 3801 mainly operate on celebratory events, examples being the 25th anniversary of the Newcastle Flyer, as well as the Western Endeavour, which traverses the continent from Sydney to Perth. In 1974, we see 3801 appear in the award-winning short film A Steam Train Passes, which also coincides with its move into preservation. In 1976, the engine sees another boiler failure, which leads to its withdrawal for multiple years until the proposal of its full restoration for the 1988 bicentenary of British settlement in Australia. Here it would accompany the Flying Scotsman on its year-long tour of the country, being Australia's representative of its railways. May 1990, 3801 was involved in the Cowan rail disaster. 3801, returning from a jazz festival, struggled to climb the Cowan bank, which resulted in another passenger train running into the back of 3801's carriages, resulting in 6 fatalities. In 2006, we see the ownership of the locomotive being handed to the New South Wales Rail Transport Museum until it was withdrawn a year later for a major overhaul in 2007. This overhaul involved replacing the boiler with one from Germany and was set to be complete by the end of 2010. However, 9 years later in 2019, the boiler upgrades were finally complete, with the locomotive passing the first steam test in September of that year. Early 2020 saw it get repainted in its iconic green and yellow livery, with its launch set for March 2020, which was unfortunately postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, 3801 is now active again on NSW railways, with its home being here in Thirlmere. But anyway guys, I hope you have enjoyed this quick little video about 3801. At the end of the day, I'm not an expert on this locomotive, it's all been internet research, so if you guys have any more information, please leave them in the comments below, because I want to learn all I can about this locomotive. And if you have enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time.